All right, let's get into this. My emotions, as you can tell, are raw. Let's get some icy distance from this third party objective evaluation of what's going down in Pittsburgh. You know what? Let's talk about pro football at large with one of the best evaluators in the business. You follow him every springtime in advance of the draft. And he's taking the pulse of what's going down in pro football as we speak, also rejoicing because his Notre Dame Fighting Irish emerged victorious on Saturday night. He's Mike Renner from The Messenger. What's happening, man? Glad we finally connect here on the podcast.
Yeah, so glad. It's been too long, but I'm not sure I'm rejoicing after that Notre Dame win. I'm more like exhaling. The last 2 weeks almost killed me with the Ohio State game, and then those back to back. Like my heart can only take so much.
Yeah, I get the relief angle from an Irish supporter against Duke. You should beat that team. Not fraudulent, but obviously you're the entrenched football power. But then Sam Hartman breaks off that run. There had to be a little euphoria, right?
Okay, that run got me going. Yeah, the run was a different level. That was just like a play. Like Notre Dame consistently, just from my fandom, I went there starting 2008. They just never make that play, right? They haven't had a guy who's made that play, and they finally did. I love Hartman.
Well, listen, I have to tip my cap to you. I used to be in the club of great hairdos for fellas. Age has gotten the better of me now. You still, what a mane you have. Muzzle tough on that, but it takes a backseat to Sam Hartman. So, I mean, what a head of hair that fella has. I don't know that the draft evaluators are going to add that in to his pro football resume, but go ahead and give it to us right now. Sam Hartman, does he project as a first-round draft pick?
Well, the flow is first round. It is elite flow beard combo. I mean, I saw more TikToks about him from females than I did from males, and people tweeting about it.
He's a handsome devil. Let's just get
first round. Here he is. I'm not gonna. And he looks older than me too. Somehow, I mean, he's pretty old for a college quarterback, but he looks like he's in his mid-30s. But first round, I don't think he has the arm talent. And then two, this quarterback class is going to have it's going to have a lot of guys in that mix. This really is one of the deepest, maybe not be like 5 first rounders like we saw in 2021, but you're going to have like 10 guys go in the top 100 probably at the quarterback position because there's just a lot of talent. So I think he could sneak his way into that top 100 if he keeps playing well. But I do think he's just limited physically enough that I don't think he's going to project to like a starter at the next level. So probably projecting back up immediately, which drops him probably day 3.
Okay, while we're on the subject, go ahead and do it. This is, it's like talking to a doctor and not showing him the growth on your elbow. I have to take advantage of you while we have you here. Give us your ranking of the QBs as it stands right now. Some late noise about Shedeur Sanders maybe vaulting past Caleb Williams. How say you? Give us win, play, show your top 3 quarterbacks in the 2024 draft.
I can't get on board with that. Caleb Williams is still, and I can't even get on board with jumping Drake May either. So Caleb Williams won. I was honestly saw him neck and neck with Drake May heading into the year. I think Caleb Williams is just like too gifted to like fail. I just think he's really got total package, even if like that USC offense sometimes is playing on easy mode. Him, then Drake May, and then QB3 is the one that's like debatable. I'm leaning Bo Nix right now over Shedeur. But Shedeur is like, come on, real strong. It's those two to me are neck and neck right now. But I think Bo Nix is almost underrated because it's almost like what Jalen Hurts' career was. You think of Jalen Hurts, everyone thinks freshman year Jalen Hurts, right, at Alabama, coming out in draft. People are like, that guy can't be an NFL quarterback. Everyone thinks freshman, sophomore year Bo Nix at Auburn. And, I mean, admittedly, didn't look like an NFL quarterback at all. But the last 2 years, he's got a lot of talent. He's a gifted runner. I think Bo Nix can sneak his way in the first round here.
All right. Listen, let's talk maybe towards the end of the season or maybe after it passes and get in on the draft evaluation. It's endlessly fascinating to me, even though it hits the same beats at roughly the same point on the football calendar every single year. And I've talked about it ad nauseum. I want to try and figure this out. If you're at the quarter pole here in the NFL season and your season ain't going right as a football fan, you are now starting to listen to Mike Renner and thinking about like, ooh, can we get Drake May? Is that a possibility? Could he be under center for my favorite football team? But It's changed to some degree, and I always point at Cliff Kingsbury making the impact that has already outlasted his presence in the NFL, which is just because you took a quarterback in the first round last year doesn't mean that you can't take another quarterback in the first round the following year. And so I kind of want to figure out here, at what point is it appropriate to tear off the Band-Aid? If you have drafted a quarterback in the first round here, let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers as a for instance here. The idea of sunk costs. The Steelers draft this kid in the first round, a year ago, 18 months or so ago. And he has Matt Canada, who he worked with at Pitt. And there were some signs, some cause for optimism in the back half of 2022 with Pickett in Canada. And now 4 games in, it looks like a complete mess. And so, specific to this situation, but more universally, at what point do you sort of say, like, yeah, we invested in this kid with a first round pick and he's working with this coordinator? Do you make a change? Because if you make a change at the coordinator level, aren't you essentially scuttling the ability to fully get a good read on this quarterback who is in his second year, who you want to know by the end of his second season, like, this is our guy, 100%, we're rolling with this guy for the next few years? Do you understand kind of what I'm trying to ask you here? I don't know if it's too muddled, my question for you, but try and make some sense of, like, at what point should you, how about that? At what point should you know as a pro football team, like, this ain't right, we gotta tear it up and start from scratch? When does it make sense to do that without scuttling the entire operation and setting it back a couple of years?
I will say, I think year 3 is the last possible year I'd give a quarterback, to like figure it out in terms of showing that he's one of, the 32 best stars in the NFL. But even then, if you are like 20 through 32, like until you've shown that you're really a franchise guy, I think you should always have your options open, and especially in the draft when we just see an influx of quarterback talent seemingly every single year coming in, that, with the increase of passing at high school level and just private quarterback coaches and just like the development of these guys, I think until you have, until you feel secure in that guy, that he's a big time second contract quarterback, you should always have your options open. And especially when, that's to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers here, especially when like quarterback this year really not look good. And now obviously I have an opinion on that, it's not necessarily all his fault, but it's like, there's nothing really to point to on tape through 4 games this season, sadly, saying Kenny Pickett's a franchise quarterback. Now, he looked great in the preseason. I thought he had flashes down the stretch, but there's no consistent high level of play that we've seen from him. And again, like, extenuating circumstances here, I think he's in a bad situation for himself. But at the same time, a lot of the guys who turn out to be dudes, whether it's Joe Burrow, with Zach Taylor, whether it was Justin Herbert with 3 different OCs his first 3 years, like, the cream tends to rise no matter what. Like, it's usually when a guy has it, the guy hasn't. So I think that, so to answer your question, I'm not sure if they answer your question, but
no, I think I think you're getting at it, right?
Or year 1, 2, if you don't show any of that, you keep the options open. I don't think it hurts you. At worst, say the light switch does come on, you draft quarterback in the offseason, light switch does come on. You have 2 quarterbacks, they're the most valuable assets in the NFL. You can trade a guy who's in his prime, say it is Kenny Pickett, say it's, you do draft Drake May next year, whatever it is. That guy doesn't lose their value and even holds their value. And we saw Sam Darnold play terribly and still get a second rounder in return for the New York Jets. Like, they hold their value and are worthy of those high picks way more than any other position in the NFL. Whereas, Jeffrey Okudah plays poorly, he goes for a 6th rounder. So I don't think that it's as crazy a conversation. And I don't think it's necessarily, you're necessarily hurting one guy's development as much as it is just giving your team the most options possible at the most valuable position.
In a weird way, the canary in the coal mine could be Washington, 2010, 2011. What season was that? 2012, maybe even, when RG3, that's 2012. They also, Washington takes Kirk Cousins in the 3rd round, and Kirk Cousins by year 2 or 3 has that team in the playoffs. And obviously we know what's happened with Cousins since all that. So I don't think it's crazy, the idea. And I do think that just like, oh, you can't run the option in the NFL gets blown up when you actually try. Like, oh yeah, you can. I guess you can do that. It's the old saw about like, well, you can't take quarterbacks over. Like, yeah, you can. I get what I made fun of Colin Cowherd last week when he suggested that the Steelers should offer up 3 first-round picks and TJ Watt and whoever else to try and get Caleb Williams. And I do get the spirit of what he's saying. If you don't land the franchise QB, the thing that allows you is you can contend, you can win a Super Bowl with a middle-class QB. What you can't do is be in contention every single year. But you mentioned Sam Darnold, and that brings me to the 49ers. And that is what trips up football fans is, how do you explain Brock Purdy then? Like, how is it possible that the idea that you got to move heaven and earth to get one of the bona fide, real deal QB, superhero level talents, whether it's Drake May, Caleb Williams, or otherwise, how then do you explain the success that the Niners are having, even though they missed on Trey Lance a couple of years ago and fell into Brock Purdy?
Oh, and that goes back to what I was saying about extenuating circumstance for Kenny Pickett. There is an offensive tree that has proliferated around the NFL where seemingly every quarterback it touches is gold now, whether it's, it's the Shanahan tree. So whether it's obviously Purdy, whether it's CJ Stroud with Bobby Slowick down in Houston now playing the best of any rookie, whether it's Tua playing, at an MVP level Miami with Mike McDaniel, or whether it's, Matt Stafford, obviously out in LA, like you could do a lot. It should be a twofold thing. It's, do you have the play caller who's scheming up open guys for a guy? And then do you have the quarterback who's also hitting that guy? So it is a twofold. You can, create offense through both avenues and ideally through both avenues. But if you don't have that play caller, you better have, the superhuman guy quarterback, or else you're not going to be moving the ball offensively in today's NFL, sadly. So it is a twofold problem that currently the Steelers are failing both those folds.
I asked somebody once why he broke up with a woman. He's like, because she always wanted to sit with her back to the wall in the restaurant, and that's where I want to sit. Everybody can't be the star. It's a relationship. They always talk about who's got the hand in a romantic relationship. It does sound to me like the opposite. Like both guys want to drive the car. Neither guy, Canada or Pickett, is breaking through. Shanahan can make a go of things and actually succeed in the NFL with Brock Purdy. Or the other side of the ledger is, I guess the perfect thing is, though, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are the optimal marriage. I don't know that Josh Allen with Ken Dorsey is in as good a situation, but he's imbued with those aforementioned superhero powers, so it kind of doesn't matter. And then down in Miami, you have Tua, who has human gifts, not outsized ones, but he has Mike McDaniel calling the plays. So give me the blame assessment here, because it's whack-a-mole. You can kind of silo like it's Kenny Pickett, because look, he's making bad reads here. I can see on the all 22, to my relatively untrained eye, I can see he's missing open receivers. That's on him. But also I can see that Matt Canada is not consistently putting the offense in favorable situations. So what is your blame assessment? Or do you put it on the offensive line, which is option C? Or you can go D. It's a collection of all.
I think it definitely is a collection of all. Like, no one's really pulling their weight. It's not like Kenny Pickett's playing fantastic football and then all of a sudden there's just literally no one open. Like you said, there are times where he has throws that he's just either turning down or has missed. But if I had to put it, I think it's, 50% Canada on the OC of the play calling. They're probably like 30, 35% on the offensive line, then whether 15, 20 on Pickett. And it's more like the mesh of just going back to Pickett in college at Pittsburgh and what he did best. Like he had, I believe, the longest time to throw in the nation that year. He is a guy who wants to work deep to short, and he wants to attack down the football field, but he wants time to do it. He's a guy who's going to buy himself time no matter what he's going to do to try to work downfield first. And he's in an offense where the downfield stuff that they're giving him is outside the numbers almost entirely. And he's liked to throw a lot of posts when they give him that, and like digs and inbreakers. He likes those routes, liked them a lot of Pitt. It's an offense that's not giving him a lot of chances in those areas. And so when he is attacking, it has to be almost outside the numbers on pure go routes on the outside. And that just wasn't really who he was at Pittsburgh even. It's not who he is as a passer. And so those balls have been very inconsistent and very, you're limiting yourself in big plays because that's just not a ball he throws particularly great. And so you're trying to make him into this quick passer, timing offense when that's never really been his game. And you're not giving him a lot of throws he was so successful at a Pitt. And then when he has tried to buy time, and obviously off the line, you're getting a lot of pressure on him so far this season. He's getting corralled more than he was at Pitt, right? He's not this high level athlete. He doesn't even have quite the Mahomes level of feel to really get out and escape these tight situations. So you almost have to do a little bit more max pro, a little bit more time just to give him what he wants. That's how he wants to play the quarterback position. He's going to hold on to the ball longer than Joe Burrow is going to hang on to the ball. That's just, two different stylistically way they want to play, but they're trying to make him play like Joe Burrow in this offense. And that's just, square peg in a round hole, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's again back to the analogy of a romantic relationship. You always hear about like oh, she's perfect, I just need to change her some, or vice versa. And that seems to be the misstep. Or I don't know if it's the responsible Omar Khan and Kevin Colbert making the draft pick of Kenny Pickett. So it all leads me to, or if it is Matt Canada not using Kenny Pickett or playing into the strengths of the kid. It all leads me to this. Let's say that Kenny Pickett hadn't gone to Pitt. He had gone to, let's say, K-State. Would the Pittsburgh Steelers have drafted him at the spot they did in the first round last year?
That's a great question. And it's obviously difficult to say one way or the other. I do think like what he did at Pitt, he wasn't supposed to do. I could see falling in love with him. I knew a lot of people who saw him as the best quarterback in that draft, saw him as worthy of where he went. I was a little lower on him for kind of the reasons I outlined about the, how he has to win at the next level. But I do think they probably still would have, because I do think there was a lot to like about his performance and a lot to like about him as a person that wasn't just because he's a Pitt legend and you're going to get that, the fan base is going to rally around that sort of thing. So I think they probably still do, but it's difficult to say. I think that definitely played a factor that, it was an easy win for the fan base and an easy pick to like if you are going to sell yourself into a quarterback about a guy who was just, a Pittsburgh Panthers legend.
Hey, it's rah-rah and all that, and being a fan of a team, it's become a little more acceptable than it was 20 years ago when I first started talking into a microphone. But I don't mind telling you, from the fan level, and this is the time to say this because things are not going well for the Steelers, so it's not as easy for people to go like, yeah, that's right, Yins. If it doesn't work out for Kenny Pickett in this situation, I still say I go back to that spot and say, this was spiritually the absolute right thing to do. If you can win with the local quarterback at the pro level, it will make it that much sweeter. And so I do not think that Kevin Colbert, Mike Tomlin, the Rooney family and beyond made a misstep here. I do think that on some level, though, they've miscast him a little bit. And, I think maybe the comp would be to go back to like what we were talking about with Cliff Kingsbury and the Cardinals and saying like, okay, so we missed on Josh Rosen a year ago. I think that Kyler Murray is in fact the real deal. So let's draft him. I think about Josh Rosen, the mirage that happens in the misread. Correct me if I'm wrong, Renner, I defer to you, the expert on this. Very often the misread with college quarterbacks going into the pros is the mirage of he can get himself out of trouble with his athleticism. It's one thing. I could think the perfect example is probably actually Johnny Manziel, not Josh Rosen. Johnny Manziel could literally run away from trouble, even against Alabama, but you can't do it at the pros. You can't dodge trouble and escape the pocket and make something out of nothing. And Kenny Pickett is looking to bail the pocket, and he always has had that weird, even in his special season, his last year at Pitt, he always had the issue of that weird drift where he loses power and yards and some ability to drive the ball as he sort of gently drifts from the pocket. I'm all about those gentle rolls that we saw a lot of in pro football a year ago and moving the pocket. I think that's where Pickett's at his best. And then that brings me back to, what are you doing, Matt Canada? If that's what the kid, if that's where the kid thrives, why are we not seeing that more consistently?
Yeah, there was, I think it was Norv Turner when I was early on with PFF said he doesn't watch college quarterbacks, evaluating college quarterbacks. He only watches them under pressure because that is the quickest way you fail going from college to the NFL, is just not having that, like that ability to handle what's going on, move accordingly, and still be able to throw footballs. Because that's going to be a lot of, 30-year dropbacks in the NFL are going to be like that, where you're going to have to handle it. And if you're just a dud on a third of those dropbacks, you are the worst quarterback in the NFL, right? You're in the mix for that. So it was one thing that did worry me, and is exactly what you said there, is that his move versus pressure was backwards a little bit. It was kind of like drift off to the side backwards, and then as you
to
said,
the
like
right,
that limits,
or he pirouettes
yes.
to his left. He makes that hard turn,
yes.
and he ran himself into that sack and the injury on 4th and 1. Inexplicable. I mean, again, that's the perfect storm. Kenny Pickett making bad decisions off of a horrible play call. I mean, that is the quintessential Matt Canada experience at this point, is 4th and 1. I mean, again, now you're playing against the Houston Texans defense. D'Amico Ryans looks like he's putting something nice together and all that, but 4th and 1, you go gun. There's no threat at all. You go gun out of that. And then on top of it, the problem is made worse by Kenny Pickett spinning himself into injury and all of that, when he had not one, but at least 2 options to dump the ball off to. By the way, he could have run for it as well. I'm sorry, I had to obsess a little bit over that 4th and 1 play here while I'm talking to you. But yes, continue with where you were going there.
I know, and he's kind of he'll limit himself, and then like that just gets exacerbated by a bad offensive line. So you're this guy that you would have liked to have put a better offensive line. And I think like Jalen Hurts did some of the same things at Oklahoma too, but you see him playing behind the best offensive line in the NFL, and it doesn't matter all of a sudden. Like, it's not nearly as big a deal. But I do think you mentioned the 4th and 1. The worst call to me was the 3rd and 2 when they were in scoring range. I believe it was first drive of the second half, where they just run inside zone from 2 yards out from the gun. It's like no window dressing, no eye candy, just run up. Like, you don't have the guys right now. Like, that's fine. You can do that again. Go back to the Eagles. You can do that if you're the Eagles. Sure, you can run inside zone to your heart's delight and you'll pick it up. But like, they don't have the dudes right now. And so when you don't have the dudes up front, you better be trying a little more. You can't just say, oh, we didn't execute well enough. Well, it's like, yeah, you're not going to execute well enough because you don't have a good offensive line. Like, they're never going to execute well enough for you.
Well, let me ask, I got to interrupt you on that, because here, my misread, I've said for many, many moons that I am not an O-line evaluator, but I do buy that they went out and Andy Weidel comes over from Philadelphia, and he certainly is expert at loading up at the line of scrimmage, and they did a lot of good work, it appeared, this offseason in the draft and free agency to fix both sides of the line of scrimmage. So again, it comes back to, was it a misread by me and many other people that the talent just wasn't there? Is San Francisco, the best team in pro football, it's such a gargantuan jump? Think about it. Start from Brock Purdy to Kenny Pickett. CMC is a massive upgrade from what the Steelers have at running back, but very different styles. I think Najee Harris has been diminished wildly for, again, talk about misuse. That's the main problem with Najee Harris. He's a banger. What do you outside pitches, tosses to Najee Harris? What do you know who he is, right? Is the offensive line, is the talent just not there yet? That's what I'm hearing from you, or is it the scheme that is undermining the talent?
So one, I don't like the talent is, I don't think there. And okay. I like that you mentioned San Francisco, because I don't think they're too dissimilar from an offensive line talent perspective. And now they do have Trent Williams, which like obviously like gives you some whatever, but like the rest of that offensive line is probably left guard to right tackle about the same, Pittsburgh versus them. But like what they do is they roll pockets. They don't run up the gut. They're not running just inside zone. They're getting wide with CMC. They're doing different stuff. They're giving you a lot to where they're not just asked to, deuce block 10 times a game. Like the Steelers offensive line is just saying, move these guys off the line of scrimmage. It's like, you don't have the people movers that you got to do a little something to put them in a better situation. So it's the inability or the inability to scheme around the fact that you don't have a good offensive line that San Francisco does. They're either getting the ball out of Brock's hands quickly or using play action to buy him more time. The inability to scheme around that and give Kenny Pickett, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, put them in more situations that I think is the problem. And to me, the thing that really, I think teams that run screens well, that's a good proxy for how good your offensive coordinator is if your screen designs are picking up numbers. Andy Reid's traditionally always been that. I think this year, I think the team that has most first downs on screens, I think it's Jaguars, Doug Peterson, good play callers, run good screens. I think the Steelers this year, I think I looked it up, 1 first down on screens. They've run 13 screens this year, just going nowhere. You obviously look at the Bears and what they've done on screens. When you're not a good play caller, you just don't understand how the screens work. And I think that's been another avenue where it's just when they try different stuff, when they try to go outside the box, it's really not it's not the stuff that's working around the NFL.
Straight up, this is a crazy remark from someone who sounds drunk at the bar, but I swear Matt Canada miscounts defenders. He feels I think he comes up with these plays on a piece of paper, maybe at the bar. I don't know. Maybe he's at the other end for me. And he comes up with these and he doesn't actually put them into practice to see if the to see if the tight end can get across the line of scrimmage to make the block that he anticipates for this, to spring this run
before he runs into Najee Harris
and everything. I mean, it feels to me like one of the crimes that Canada is committing is those guys, those Steelers offensive skill guys are getting smacked. He is putting them into spots that are consistently getting them lit up. And as far as that goes, I do think Kenny Pickett has taken some shots here. Now, I don't absolve him of responsibility for that, but I do see, people have told me for years, the old thing about Blaine Gabbert, he sees ghosts, he doesn't like pressure around him. And the point is well taken that watch college kids when they have pressure on them and see how they react. But as human beings, the longer you walk the planet Earth, the more you become existentially aware. And so it's in your late 30s where you're like, I don't want to get hit anymore. But it does seem to me like maybe Kenny Pickett is seeing some ghosts here. Do you see that?
And it goes back to, I think, just his initial reaction to pressure and what it has been his entire career. And then just pile on more, right? And so, you almost get entrenched in how you react to pressure, and then it just snowballs. It's like what everyone said about, David Carr and his career getting ruined by, that offensive line. And that's a real thing. It changes your eye level the more pressure you're under, because the play we talked about where he got hurt, there wasn't really pressure. That wasn't really a pocket that
there are going to be bodies around you. Right. Exactly.
And he's just assuming that, or it's just his first reaction is that, there's one guy kind of gets pushed into the pocket. It's going to mean a free runner. It's going to mean someone separating off a block. I'm toast. I got to get out of here. And so it's kind of changed his calculus of what he does when he sees pressure. And that's just, again, the last place you want your quarterback to be. So as much as they tried to improve his offensive line, those 2 tackles are still definitely an issue.
Okay, I guess here's the bottom line, because like I say, the answer is very likely with the Pittsburgh Steelers specifically is that it is not one person's fault. It is, and in fact, that's the worst possible answer, Jens. It is not it would be better if you could just circle who's Waldo in the ineptitude and dismiss that person and then move forward without him. But it is a lot of different parts. But in 2023, as we try and make sense of this, as I say, in this millennium, there has been the great success of first overall draft picks proving their value, and Patrick Mahomes, what was he, 10th overall? He went and won. Matthew Stafford finally got his. So obviously, if you have pedigree, you can succeed and succeed consistently in the NFL. But there are also guys like Tom Brady, who is the alter ego of Peyton Manning, that those two consumed a decade in the 21st century going head to head, 6th-round draft pick versus first overall, is playing itself out once again here with Brock Purdy kind of jumping the league. It's very strange that we may now have another 10 years of the Tom Brady experience in Tom Brady's hometown or a home region via Brock Purdy. And, there's Russell Wilson in his years in Seattle. There are different ways to skin the cat. So here's the question for you. You get to choose one. You can have the best offensive coordinator in the league, or you can have the best quarterback in the league. Go. And league. How about let's say league average at the other spot that you don't get the pick?
That one, see, I think there's such a difference between the haves and have-nots right now at offense coordinator. Like, there are some guys who are just dialing it up.
I mean, Ben Johnson is clearly the people. It's funny because Jared Goff's going to end up getting paid, it would seem, in Detroit, but he's the fungible part, right? I mean, and isn't that also been proven true over and over and over again, ironically, except with Trey Lance. The one guy who they moved heaven and earth to get is the only one who didn't work out for Kyle Shanahan.
So I think I'm going top of the league OC over top of the league quarterback as we stand right now. Now, because I've been, as a Packers fan, I think I was in a situation where there was top of the league quarterback and average OC. And that's like, you just get frustrated in that situation. Now, the other side, like when it's top of the league OC, you're like, okay, it was there. You're just like, you missed it. Like sometimes guys miss it. That happens. But I think it's more fun to watch a well-schemed offense than to watch a quarterback almost be like hamstrung because of the lack of creativity.
It's funny that you conclude, I am with you, that the better thing, if you want to be a winner, you want the offensive coordinator. You want the genius. But as a football fan, it's kind of uninspiring. Like I just said, we just finished 20 years, and it's fairly clear now. Here's the irony, the paradox of it. It's pretty clear that without Tom Brady, Bill Belichick is a good coach, but not the greatest coach of all time. But at the same time, I think that we're about to, with Kyle Shanahan, not that Belichick's the offensive guru or for those 20 years, but you take my point. And now we're moving into another. And it's kind of like we coach good. That's no fun. What you want is your superhero star making the difference, right? I mean, but I do hear what you're saying, and I do think that that's the answer here. And one last question for you from the outside looking in. You probably aren't as steeped in the way of the Steelers as I am in Mike Tomlin's regime and all that, but they don't often fire an offensive coordinator in the middle of the season. Is it warranted here? If you were ever going to do it, do you do it now? But given the fact that Kenny Pickett's on the shelf now, and so now you're putting in his backup, I know people have bloodlust right now. Give me someone's head. I don't care whose head it is, but we have to lop off someone's head to make sense of losing like that to the Texans. You can't take out the offensive coordinator as you prep for the arch rival, though, right?
Yeah, I think if it really, like, if you start getting the locker room, if you start losing the locker room, sure, you can pull the trigger. But right now, there's no, what's the next man up going to change this offense to? Like, I don't think you're necessarily in a position where it's going to change much. It rarely does. But I think a few more games of this, you get to midseason and this hasn't looked any better, it's more than warranted. There's enough talent here. There's enough talent here to win games, and obviously not having Jonathan Johnson has been a hamper too, but like they should look better than the complete ineptitude that we've seen a handful of times.
I have the Jenga theory, which is if you remove the wrong Jenga piece, the whole thing will implode, like that, which is what happens to pro football teams. You cannot excuse what's happening with the Steelers too, that they're missing this piece or that piece. That, plenty of other teams have injuries. You must, especially if you're going to constantly get up to a podium and talk about the standard being the standard. It just becomes empty pap at some point. All right, listen, Renner, dynamite stuff. I'm sorry. One more question I got to ask you, because I'm talking about moving on from quarterbacks. Let's lightning round it. Chicago Bears drafting a quarterback in the first round next year.
Have to.
Have
so.
to.
Yes.
Okay, so no attempt to fix Justin Fields. Does he land as a starter somewhere else, Justin Fields?
You can keep him on the roster. I
him.
think teams like the Ravens would love to try to develop him behind Lamar Jackson. Teams like a running quarterback that are using quarterback and running game a lot would love to like try to develop him, but there's enough tape at this point where it's just like you got to take another chance. It doesn't mean necessarily have to trade him, but you got to take another chance, quarterback.
Steelers drafting a quarterback in the first round in 2024.
I don't think so, because they'll be drafting like 16th again, right? They'll be 8 and 9, 9 and 8,
probably
10 and 7.
Yes, they will be.
Right. Every year they are, and that's the worst place, historically to find quarterbacks usually. So,
well, they're not going to attempt to. They're not going to purposely start dropping games or anything else. But Mitchell Trubisky under center might put them in that spot. And the one that fascinates me is, although Zach Wilson looked halfway decent on Sunday night, let's not ignore the fumble, everybody. Let's not make it a conspiracy theory that the league's in the bag for the Chiefs. Zach Wilson fumbled the ball, hit him in the hands. That probably had as much to do with the outcome as anything. But I think what's really fun, what if the Jets wind up, and you talk about a deep quarterback class. What if they wind up top 5 pick? Do they take a quarterback with Aaron Rodgers on the roster and Zach Wilson?
I think so. And that's because you end up with top 5 pick. I mean, Zach Wilson did not look like the Zach Wilson we saw for like 2 drives last night the rest of the season, right? It means he kind of tanked, because this defense is still good enough that if he looks good at all, they'll be at least around 500 again.
Hey, great stuff, Renner. Let's do it again soon as the Steelers or some other teams sink deeper into hole and start looking ahead to the light that is the draft in springtime of 2024. Continued success to you and to your Irish and beyond.
Thank you so much. And yes, the draft is always the beacon of hope at the end of the tunnel. This year could be the year.
We got to get Renner, though. We got to get him some stuff on his walls. We got his new crib there in Nashville. All white walls. You're just going to keep it like that. Is that your style? Oh, look at that.
The focus is on the TVs. You can't.
Oh, my God. Look at you. You really are. You're the thing that women post
locked
about.
In all weekend.
Look at that. He's got a mane of hair, handsome devil. And he's like, I don't have time for you, ladies. Football is my number one lady. I got to spend all weekend in my hole here. Well done. I like it. All right, Renner. Let's kibitz again soon. Thanks for the time today, man.